Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're embarking on really a captivating journey. We're heading to a West African nation that's often overlooked, I think, but one with an incredibly rich, complex, and, well, resilient story, Togo.
Absolutely.
Now, you've provided us with a truly comprehensive set of sources. There's a detailed history from Associate Professor Dr. Afisvat Chayapolfat Sirivadawar of Dachara, alongside, vital insights into its economy, its culture, modern challenges.
Yeah, a really good mix.
Exactly. So our mission today is to kind of dig into these sources, unearth the most compelling nuggets, and give you a real shortcut to understanding Togo's past, present, and maybe what lies ahead.
And what's truly illuminating, I find, from these sources is how they meticulously piece together a narrative from historical records that are, well, sometimes quite fragmented.
Right.
They really highlight the immense challenge of preserving memory through eras of colonialism and forced displacement. This deep dive isn't just about recounting events, it's about revealing those enduring cultural threads that have persisted, often against incredible odds.
So let's dive in. We'll start by grounding ourselves in Togo's unique geography, then trace its history from ancient settlements through the profound impact of European powers, leading to its hard-won independence, and finally, its dynamic yet often complex journey into the 21st century. Okay, first off, geography. Imagine this sliver of land in West Africa, just 56,785 square kilometers.
Tiny.
Yeah, roughly the size of West Virginia, maybe. Just to give you a sense of scale, it's one of the smallest nations on the African mainland. You've got Burkina Faso, Ghana, and Benin as neighbors, and this precious 56-kilometer coastline on the Gulf of Guinea.
Just 56 kilometers, yeah. And its geography is quite distinct, isn't it? This long, narrow stretch, about 550 kilometers north to south, but only, 150 kilometers wide at its maximum.
Exactly. Very narrow.
And that narrowness packs a punch in terms of diverse landscapes. As you move inland from the coast, you find these narrow plains giving way to a central plateau, maybe around 300 meters high. Then further west, the plateaus rise even higher, getting up to 650 meters in the Aquapim Mountains, and the country's highest point, Mount Ago, stands proudly at 986 meters.
Wow.
Then you head north and you're into clay and sandy lowlands, sort of rolling hills.
And the climate. Hot, tropical, naturally, with a distinct rainy season, April to October, roughly. This leads to quite varied vegetation, greener plateaus down south, more semi-arid savanna up north, but maybe most crucially, for both its past and present.
Lomé.
The capital. Ah, yes, the port. It hosts one of West Africa's best ports. And this isn't just a local asset. It's a major transit route, a vital artery connecting landlocked neighbors like Burkina Faso and Mali to the sea.
That's absolutely key. And it brings us to a fundamental insight, really. To truly grasp Togo's present political realities, we have to journey back through its deep historical roots, a story that begins thousands of years ago.
Right, ancient settlements.
Human settlement here is ancient. Ancestry traces back to powerful empires that flourished north of modern Togo between, say, the 11th and 16th centuries. Over time, various tribes dispersed, settling into the regions we now know as Togo, Benin, and Nigeria.
And there's that fascinating detail you pointed out, the story of the Mina tribe.
Yes.
In the 13th century, they undertook this significant exodus, fleeing a demanding chief, Misaho, from Matan. They ended up settling near the Mono River mouth. It really shows this constant pattern of migration, reshaping communities.
Exactly. It's a pattern. And these migrations formed the mosaic of people you find in Togo today. The main ethnic groups are the Yu-speaking people in the south and the Kabi-speaking people more north and central, separated by the Akposo Mountains.
And lots of subgroups too, right? Tem, Kodakoli.
Lamba, Anlo, yeah. And immigrant groups like the Anlo often settled in maritime towns Lomé, Aneo specifically for trade. What's particularly striking is how these diverse groups sometimes coalesced into new ethnicities, and they even legitimized their claims to land through new forms of juju worship.
Ah, the traditional spiritual practices.
Right, often involving rituals, offerings, connecting with spirits. It was a way of embedding themselves in the new land.
And religion, it seems, really weaves through the fabric of daily life there. Animism, the belief in spirits controlling weather, daily events is very prevalent.
Still very strong.
Yeah, existing alongside vibrant Christian and Muslim communities. Rituals like prayer, offering, sacrifices, often fowls, goats are practiced to commune with these spirits. And that fire festival, usually April or May.
A huge event. A real testament to these deep traditions.
Definitely.
And what's truly profound here, I think, is the deep-seated cultural resilience you see. Despite the massive impacts of, nation-states, Christianity, science, these indigenous beliefs haven't just endured, they've often co-evolved.
Adapted.
Exactly. Adapted without losing their essence. Ceremonies honoring chiefs and kings are major community events, bringing together various ethnic groups through dances, rituals, symbolizing a powerful sense of unity. There are even specialized spirits believed to protect different trades, like hunters or craftsmen, often represented by figures or animals. It's deeply embedded.
Okay, so that sets the scene. Now, the late 19th century brings a new and often brutal chapter: European colonialism.
Yes.
The land was formally incorporated into the German Empire as a protectorate in 1884, though Germany had already annexed parts earlier in 82. And those early interactions, the sources describe them as abysmal.
Not a good start. And the German presence wasn't about mass settlement, was it? It was mainly merchants, traders, military administrators.
Right. Small numbers, relatively speaking.
Which led to what became known as Bismarck's system, a regime characterized by significant violence. It seems to have arisen partly from a power vacuum and, frankly, a lack of external oversight.
And the sources give horrifying examples. Villages like Séville, Sekale just raised. Records showing about 1,700 men and women captured, enslaved during this period. It's stark.
It really is.
A pivotal moment in this German era was the construction of Fort Bismarck in 1886. This was a momentous decision, as one source puts it, by a Bremer trading company.
Trying to secure trade.
Exactly. Their goal was to shake off competing French traders, keep Togoland's trade for themselves, even as they faced threats from British and French forces because of the fort's strategic border location.
Then comes World War I, and everything changes fast. British and French forces invade Togo, quickly overcoming the small German contingent. There was that key event. The perimeter battle at a narrow mountain pass in Westat became quite well known.
Right. And after the war, the League of Nations Covenant formally partitions Togo. The western part becomes British Togoland.
Slated for incorporation into the Gold Coast, affecting about 300,000 of the 900,000 Togolese population, a huge chunk.
Huge. And the eastern part became French Togoland.
And if we zoom out here, the real insight is how these early economic interventions weren't just about trade. They were about systematically reorganizing Togolese life to serve colonial interests.
Totally restructuring things.
Yeah, like the imposition of the cocoa monopoly by England, and then forming the African Civilization Society. It really illustrates the complex, often disruptive impacts of this division. It dramatically reshaped daily life, economic structures, setting a precedent for external influence that you could argue echoes even today.
So, post-World War I, Germany's colonies become mandates. Under French administration, they took southern Togoland, Lomé as capital. There was this effort to impress locals, mission complexes, hospitals.
Building infrastructure, but for whose benefit, really?
Well, yeah. After 1930, they even pushed for Africanizing architectural styles. They built a road network, but sources say it was less effective than the German railways and often neglected local farms in favor of colonial plantations.
Typical pattern, unfortunately. Meanwhile, British influence initially covered Lomé and the coast. Then they got southern Togoland after the London Agreement of 1916. Their long-term aim, full incorporation with the Gold Coast.
And under British rule, exploitation of cocoa, palm oil, it intensified significantly.
Under harsh conditions too, apparently, which understandably led to widespread resentment. By 1946, British Togoland became a UN trust territory, reflecting that shift in international oversight.
Okay, so looking at colonial Togo, poor infrastructure, subsistence economy, you might think independence seemed a distant hope.
It might have looked that way on the surface.
Yet the sources say the momentous redrawing of maps in Africa quickly gained mass appeal, and Togo's independence became, well, inevitable.
And it was a dramatic, hopeful moment when it came. April 27, 1960, Togo becomes the first nascent African republic, finally ending 93 years of colonial rule. Met with huge enthusiasm, a real sense of freedom.
Absolutely. And Sylvanus Olympia, successful businessman, fervent nationalist, he emerges as Togo's first president in 1961, carrying all those hopes.
Which raises that critical question, doesn't it? How did such a promising start, unravel so quickly?
Yeah, the turmoil came fast.
Olympio's presidency was marked by a strong nationalist stance. He expelled the French military contingent, pursued an aggressive foreign policy towards France. It created a very tense situation, internally and internationally.
And then the tragedy, January 13th, 1963. Olympio murdered in the first violent coup in independent sub-Saharan Africa, led by Sergeant Etienne Nasingbe.
A shocking event. It starkly illustrated just how fragile the country was right after independence. A painful reminder of the challenges these newly liberated nations often faced.
So after a second coup, Lieutenant Colonel Nasingbe Eyadema seized power in 1967, and this begins an era of one-party authoritarian rule that lasted 38 years.
An astounding length of time, one of the longest mandates on record anywhere, really.
And this era was defined by the systematic silencing of political opposition, severe repression, a countrywide campaign of terror, the sources say.
And it's important to understand that even though new constitutions and reforms were introduced in the 90s, 1990, 94, 95, the political system remained fundamentally flawed.
Just cosmetic changes?
Largely, it seems. Leniency was routine for the well-connected, while opponents faced fabricated charges, severe consequences. It wasn't a level playing field.
Which meant elections 1993, 98, 2003 were far from democratic. Major opposition groups often boycotted them. Participation rates were incredibly low, sometimes 10, 12%.
Yeah, people lost hope. That prolonged resistance eventually just gave way to widespread apathy, frustration. The EU even suspended development cooperation in '93, citing human rights abuses, a strong international signal.
And after Eyadema's death in 2005,
the Nasingbe clan maintained its grip. Faure Gnassingbé took over, and he's still in power.
So what does this ongoing dynastic rule mean for genuine political alternates? I mean, you have multi-party systems on paper, seemingly free elections.
But in practice, power has largely remained monopolized by the ruling family. And this has predictably led to enduring tensions, sporadic riots like we saw vividly in 2016. But it's crucial to acknowledge the courageous activism of civil society. Often guided by Christian churches, they've consistently been a positive force, even facing severe repression, restrictions on press freedom.
Right, that resilience again.
Exactly. And more recently, those significant protests led by Tikpia Chadam since August 2017, they grew, led to violent clashes, fatalities, unfortunately, and even prompted an ECOWAS summit to try and mediate. The struggle continues.
Okay, let's shift focus a bit to the economy. Subsistence farming, that's still the single most important activity, right?
Absolutely. Accounts for about 40% of GDP, employs roughly 60% of the workforce, so you have to picture it. The daily reality for nearly 2/3 of the population revolves around farming, often just to feed their own families.
That's a huge proportion.
It is, and it highlights a critical, deep-seated challenge. While Togo has immense potential for crop diversification, intensification, the agricultural sector is hampered. Low yields, high production costs, weak infrastructure, it really holds back the agri-food industry.
But the government recognizes this.
Yes, they do support agriculture, trying to reduce food import dependency, attract investment. But it's a tough slog.
And then there's that other major resource, phosphate.
Ah, yes.
The phosphate story.
Togo is the world's 4th largest producer, 2nd largest exporter. Huge reserves, 90 to 150 million tons estimated.
Massive potential.
But here's where we get that frustrating yet telling story. Back in 1996, the state-owned company, SNTT, partnered with the Guinean Phosphate Group, promised a phosphoric acid plant.
Big plans.
14 years later, nothing. Hadn't been built. Largely due, the sources indicate, to corruption, stalled negotiations. It eventually just halted completely in 2005.
A single example, but it really encapsulates some of those persistent governance issues affecting economic development, doesn't it?
It really does. Meanwhile, Lomé's port, as we mentioned, is relatively developed, crucial for neighbors like Burkina Faso, Mali.
A strategic asset, for sure. Yet, despite that, the national economy is heavily reliant on growing foreign debt. And there's this significant informal economy, contributing a substantial, though unaudited, figure to GDP. Lomé, especially, often described as an informally run, extra-legal free port.
Right. A lot happening under the radar, shaping the real economy.
Socially, you mentioned this dualistic system.
Yeah.
Small, wealthy, elite, impoverished majority.
Yes, and it's not just income disparity. If we connect this to the bigger picture, Togo's socio-political landscape represents this complex hybrid, often called a competitive authoritarian regime. Meaning, while there might be some democratic trappings, political elites exert tight control over key resources, patronage networks. History really does count double, as one source puts it, in how it influences the present distribution of power and wealth. Access, opportunity, often dictated by who you know, not just what you can do.
A persistent legacy. What about education and health?
Well, formal schooling started in 1904, initially German-only teaching. Missionary schools played a vital role, though the Germans sometimes saw them as subversive. Early challenges. Lack of knowledge of African languages by the educators themselves.
Right.
In healthcare, there have been noticeable improvements. Accessibility, quality. A 10-year investment program saw hospitals converted to teaching hospitals, a major new one built in Lomé. Increased private sector involvement too, focus on family healthcare, essential medicine access.
So some progress there.
Definitely progress. But challenges persist, particularly with diseases like STDs, HIV/AIDS. The sources suggest that understanding of these issues among the general population can still be, well, quite rudimentary, needs more public health education, outreach.
Okay, so bringing us into the 21st century, the political landscape, still evolving, still tense.
Very much so. Post-2015 election challenges saw renewed calls for democratization met with repression. Street protests, international bodies calling for dialogue.
And the unrest isn't just in Lomé.
No, it spread. Protests even emerging within the ruling Cabre ethnic group up north, which indicates escalating social tensions across the country, not just an urban phenomenon.
Amidst all this, though, Togo is active regionally. ECOWAS, UEMO.
Yes, consistently promoting economic cooperation, integration. And what's fascinating is Togo's diplomatic approach globally. They actively advocate for structured multilateralism, constructive dialogue in the UN, the AU, playing a notable role in addressing regional crises, like the recent coups in Mali, Burkina Faso, Guinea-Conakry.
Interesting. And Japan is becoming a key partner.
Increasingly so, yes. Forums held in Lomé strengthen defense cooperation, diversifying partnership.
Domestically, efforts to improve governance.
Yeah.
That new decentralization law in 2017.
An attempt to define roles of prefect and mayor better, but persistent issues plagued these reforms. Lack of consistent progress, abuses of delegated powers, continued limits on freedom of expression for journalists, opposition figures. It's an ongoing struggle.
So looking ahead, the key challenges seem clear. Effective decentralization, given that long history of centralism.
Huge challenge. Managing political violence, addressing those gaps in public health, education, infant mortality, education rates, still crucial.
But on a positive note, they've embraced the Sustainable Development Goals.
Fully. Developed a national strategy, shared vision involving the president's office, civil society, private sector. Proposals include a coordination mechanism, budget integration, and significantly, a Togo Youth Forum.
Youth engagement, that feels crucial.
Absolutely. And you see movements like Togo Debout, this civic initiative, using online and offline tools to monitor political freedoms, empower citizens to express views. They highlight everything from unreliable internet to unfair police treatment. Young Togolese are actively pushing for change, accountability.
Okay, let's shift gears one last time. Let's talk culture, heritage. Those traditional festivals sound amazing.
They really do, unique to each ethnic group. And it raises that question, beyond entertainment, what's the deeper purpose? The sources explain their profound expressions of community, belief, honoring ancestors, ensuring good harvests, promoting harmony. Specific sacrifices vary by group. You have seasonal festivals, Ivala for millet, Sotobo Yoruba for yam sowing, and commemorative ones like the New Yam Festival, purification festivals.
And rites of passage, too.
Yes, important ones like Apicium and Akpapo for young men, and these lengthy funeral ceremonies that really emphasize the deep connection between past and present generations. It's all interwoven.
And the arts. Lomé's Artisanal Center sounds like a hub.
It is, showcasing incredible local talent. Woodwork, weaving, hammering, pottery, stonework, unique items, masks like the tuku and godot, ancient artifacts.
And music, similar to Ghana and Benin.
Shares many genres, yeah. Often features evocative poems or choruses, singers, dancers, accompanied by drums, sistrums, other instruments. And dance. Well, dance accompanies nearly every significant event. Births, weddings, religious rites, political ones.
Everywhere.
Everywhere. Diverse styles reflecting different regions. The U group's intricate dance drumming, hinterland dancers simulating animal gaits. It's incredibly rich and varied.
Now, tourism.
Yeah.
It's considered less popular, right?
Yeah.
Which might be part of its charm.
Exactly. An opportunity to explore a nation still largely unimpacted by mass tourism offers a potentially more authentic experience.
So what can you, the curious traveler, expect? Up north, the Atakora mountain range, home of the Tem people.
Renowned for their soaring architecture, handicrafts, villages like Kutamaku, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and the Tambrima Valley with those distinctive conical mud brick houses under granite boulders, really unique sites, and the rock formations of Nachaba.
Down south, Lake Togo. Sounds relaxing.
A serene spot where the lagoon meets the ocean, luxurious lodging, fishing opportunities. a place to unwind.
And Lomé itself?
A captivating blend. Modern energy, traditional charm. Intriguing markets, cotton fiber, handicrafts, cultural centers, historical sites like the Presidential Palace, National Museum, and a vibrant nightlife, too.
Something for everyone, it seems.
But the sources emphasize something important for any ecotourism initiatives there.
What's that?
To succeed, it's crucial to go beyond standard best practices. Success requires locally attuned research, deep consideration of local actors, their narratives. It has to be about respecting and integrating the community's perspective for sustainable, meaningful development, not just imposing external ideas.
A really important point. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. Thousands of years of history, diverse cultures, the complex forces shaping Togo, ancient migrations to modern aspirations. It really is a country of profound resilience, isn't it? Where the past constantly informs the present.
Indeed. The source material really compels you to consider how history counts double in Togo, deeply influencing every facet of its socio-political landscape. That ongoing journey reflects this unique blend: democratic aspirations, persistent authoritarian legacies, all underpinned by that incredibly vibrant cultural core. It's a testament, really, to the enduring spirit of its people.
So as you reflect on this deep dive, maybe consider this. In a world often striving for universal ideals, democracy, economic growth, Togo presents this compelling example of a nation that, despite profound external influences, internal struggles, continues to chart its own distinctly unique path. What might other nations learn, perhaps, from Togo's remarkable perseverance in forging its identity, beyond maybe conventional definitions of success or even happiness? Something to think about.